It's Glinda! Fellow Aussians, let's talk about the Wicked movie. I promise you guys a spoiler-filled review, and that's what this is. If you're watching this, that means the movie has come out, and you can go to see it, so you definitely should before watching this, because I loved this movie. Loved it. I think everybody should see it. I think it's so much fun. So don't let me spoil it for you. Go and watch it, and then come back and watch this video and hear my opinion. I thought we could just go through kind of song by song, and I could talk about each song. So the opening of the movie is No One Mourns the Wicked. There's no lines or conversation that happens before No One Mourns the Wicked plays. Love the choice. It basically starts the exact same way the stage musical does. There was someone like riding a horse towards this village, and the hoofbeats were like worked into the actual beat of the song, and it was really cool. They continued to do that throughout the movie, where like some of the sounds of what was happening in the scene were worked so well into the song in a way that made it feel like it was more a part of the orchestration than just a sound effect, because we see that in musicals a lot where there's sound effects that overlay the song, but I don't feel like there is worked into the music as we saw in this one, and I really appreciated that. But take everything I say with a grain of salt. In my spoiler-free video, I had some comments from people who disagreed with me on a few points I made. I said that there's been no movie musicals to come out in the last decade that have this much love in them. And I also said that Ariana Grande has not acted since Victorious. The amount of comments I got that were like, she was in Sam and Cat, actually. That doesn't count. But apparently she was also in like 6 episodes of Scream Queens, and she did the live Hairspray. So it's not that she actually hasn't acted since Victorious. I apologize. I am not an Arianator. I do not know her whole entire life story. I should not have spoken from such an ignorant place. I also got comments about a few specific musicals that have come out in the last decade where people felt like they were really good and were made with a lot of love. You guys are right about In the Heights. I kind of forgot about In the Heights, if I'm being completely honest. If I'm just being so for real with you, when I was on my Wicked high, I just forgot about In the Heights completely. That was a very good adaptation. It was also directed by John M. Chu, who did Wicked. He's amazing, and he poured love into each of them, and I apologize for forgetting about that. The other 2 musicals that I got a bunch of comments about were Tick, Tick, Boom and the West Side Story adaptation by Steven Spielberg. Can I admit something to you guys? I have not seen either of those. In my defense, I have been so let down by some just truly horrific movie musicals that have come out in the past decade that I just haven't been going to the theater to see them. I'm sorry, I'll admit it. I will watch both of those though, because I got so many comments from people saying that they were really good, and I will give them both a fair shot, and I shall report back on my Instagram and let you know what I thought of them. Again, I apologize for my ignorance. I will do better next time. Thank you guys for holding me accountable. Now back to Wicked. But right away, right off the jump, I was like, oh, I'm gonna end up really loving this, because the other thing I noticed right away was that the music really sounded like the Broadway soundtrack. And something that stayed consistent throughout the entire movie, they didn't change a single word. It's not just that they kept the music really similar to the music in the stage show. From what I could tell, from what I noticed, the songs are essentially exactly the same. So maybe there's like a word here or there that I didn't notice because I was just so enraptured by the movie, but not that I can remember, none that stick out to me. I agree with that choice, which you might think is kind of strange because in my Mean Girls review, I said that I actually thought it was really smart that they changed the music. I think it depends on how good the music is in the original production. The reason I thought it was smart of the Mean Girls production to change the music was because I don't think the music in the stage production of Mean Girls is that good. So I thought that changing it for the movie was smart because they made it better. Whereas Wicked is one of the most famous musicals of the past 20 years. It's beloved. And so if you change too much about the music, you're gonna cause riots. Why change anything about the music? Like, genuinely, what would have been the point of changing the music? Because the music is really good. And so I think it was really smart of them to stick to it so religiously. As a theater kid, it warmed my heart to finally see a movie musical where they did not change any of the lyrics. because I don't get why they do that. I'm sure you guys are gonna know of some other movie musical that does that, and you're gonna be like, what about this one? I remember In the Heights being very, very similar, but I don't remember thinking, wow, they didn't change a single line, so I don't know if they did or not. I just appreciated it. So in No One Mourns the Wicked, we get Elphaba's backstory. Here's where we get into something really interesting that me and my best friend actually kind of disagreed on. I thought that the movie played significantly more into the fan theory that the wizard is Elphaba's dad than I remember the stage production doing, but she said that she felt like it was very similar to the hinting that the stage production does. She didn't think they amplified it anymore. So I'm curious to see what you guys thought. Did you feel like they played on that a little bit more? Jeff Goldblum in that scene doing all of that? I mean, I don't think it was his body. I think they had a body double. But was it his voice? I genuinely couldn't tell in the moment. When I see it again, when it actually releases, that's one of the things that I'm going to be really watching out for, is to figure out if they actually had Jeff Goldblum sing that. I think it was a body double because I don't know that he can move like that. I don't know that he dances like that. And in the stage show, I can't remember if they have the actor who plays Oz do it and just cover his face with a hat, or if they have an ensemble person do it. Per my memory, it was an ensemble actor. I don't know. I thought they played it up more than they did in the stage production, but my friend disagreed. So what do you guys think? Comment down below, tell me which of us you agree with. I won't be offended if it's her. So we get Elphaba's tragic backstory, and they pause a little bit in the song to show us more than we get to see in the stage production. This is a common theme throughout the movie. One of the things that I complimented in my spoiler-free review was that I felt like they really used their time to the maximum. Some people disagreed with the choice to separate it out into two separate movies and do one movie for the first act of the stage show and one movie for the second act of the stage show. I agree with that choice for two reasons. One, because I think it allows them to dive so much deeper into every part of the show, but two, because I think tonally, the first act of the show is like hee hee ha ha, these college girls don't get along, and the second act of the show is about fighting fascism. So it is just kind of like a wild swing in tone that I do think lends itself to two separate films. But this film is almost exactly the runtime of the stage production itself, and so they had to fill that time with more stuff than what happens in the stage show. And instead of adding plot or like adding crap that didn't need to be in there, they just dove super deep into every scene and gave you more than what they give you in the stage production. And I thought that was genius as well. So in No One Mourns the Wicked, much like in the stage show, we get Elphaba's childhood story, but we get so much deeper a dive into it and we get to see so much more of it. Then we get into a few scenes that happen between this and the next song. And it's mostly Elphaba and Nessa arriving at Shiz. Her and her dad are just there to drop Nessa off. And then at some point her dad is like, you know what, go with her and just help her settle in. And just stay with her for like a bit to help her settle in and make sure she's all good. And then Elphaba accidentally shows off her magical powers, and the sorcery professor is like, you're gonna be my student this semester, and that's how she ends up at the school. Probably just served to show us more of the dynamic between Elphaba and her dad, and to emphasize that Nessa, who is disabled, wants more freedom but is not really being granted that by her father. Her father thinks of her as less capable than others because she is disabled, and this is something that Nessa is constantly fighting against. We meet young Galinda as well, who is going by Galinda instead of Glinda, as she is called in the intro. She's very, I'm the center of the universe and my needs are more important than everybody else's needs, but in a way that's weirdly endearing. And this is where I feel like Ariana Grande just nailed this part. Throughout this entire movie, she just so perfectly captured the spoiled brat that you just can't help but love a little bit. Like there is something endearing about her despite the fact that she is truly fundamentally a horrible person. And throughout even this entire movie is showing how bad a person she is at kind of every turn. And yet she's just so goofy and over the top and funny that you find her very funny in the movie. And there's part of you that kind of likes her. Likes her isn't the right word. Like, you understand that she's the villain of this story. The best that I can word it is, while her actions aren't as damaging as they become later in the story, you can find her to be kind of this like funny sort of harmless, where it's like, yeah, she's really self-centered and yeah, she's kind of a bully, but she has a change of heart and she starts being nice to Elphaba. And so all of her other selfishness, you kind of just accept it because it becomes this almost harmless part of her until it doesn't anymore, and you remember how damaging that kind of personality trait can really be. As I'm filming this, the movie actually still isn't out yet, but one of the things I'm looking forward to the most is the Arianators, who know nothing about Wicked, finding out that Glinda is the bad guy. Yes, she wears pink. Yeah, she's all like goofy. Yeah, she's called Glinda the Good Witch, but she is the villain, and she is the villain at every turn. She is the villain in this first movie because she bullies Elphaba, and she's the villain in the second movie because she becomes a fucking fascist. She grovels in submission to feed her own ambition. You know what I'm saying? And I cannot wait. I cannot wait for the Arianators to find out that she's playing a Nazi. It's gonna be so fucking funny. And because so many people can't separate media from reality these days, it feels like, and it just feels like there's so many people out there who want media to be so sanitized, and it's almost like we can't even watch characters do bad things on screen anymore, because if you show a character doing something bad, then you must condone that action. Does anybody else feel like they see takes on the internet that are like that, where people are basically saying like, you showed something bad in this movie, therefore you support it? And it's like, well, no, people can show people acting in a way that they shouldn't in order to make commentary on that behavior. But I just have this feeling in my heart that the Arianators are not going to want to accept that Glinda is the villain of this story. And there's going to be all these think pieces about why she's like secretly not that bad. Maybe not after this movie, but after next movie, we are going to see that for sure. Oh, actually, which brings me to something else that I wanted to say about No One Mourns the Wicked that I completely forgot. Did you guys feel like Glinda was so flippant? I feel like in the Broadway show, Glinda is a lot sadder in this song. And I can kind of rationalize it. I don't want to spoil the second movie, so I guess I shouldn't say what I was about to say. Glinda knows something about this situation that the people of Oz do not know that could explain why she doesn't seem that upset during the song. But I feel like in the Broadway show, especially when she's hitting the lines, "She died alone" and things like that, I feel like there is kind of an energy and a sadness to it that wasn't there in the movie, and I believe it was intentional direction. I feel like Ariana showed me that she has the skill and the talent, that if what they had wanted for that scene was for Glinda to seem like she was pretending to be happy when she was secretly kind of sad, that was something that she would have been able to pull off. So I feel like it was intentional direction. What they wanted was for Glinda to seem really flippant and not all that sad that the Wicked Witch has died. And I find that very interesting because I feel like that isn't typically how they do it in the stage show, and there is a bit more of Glinda seeming kind of sad during that song. So I just thought that was interesting. I wanted to point that out. What did you guys think about that? But going back to what I was talking about before, I just thought that Ariana's performance as Glinda was truly hysterical and endearing. Like, I don't have a better word for it. There was something about her that was endearing, and during the points in the show where her selfishness is harmless, it was easy for you to forget that selfishness can be such a damaging trait, and it makes the moments where she's selfish later in the show that are so damaging hit that much harder because it's been there the whole time. It's been the undercurrent of all of her behavior, but you forget about it almost when it's not actively hurting anybody around her. And so then when it comes back around and is damaging and is harmful, you're like, oh my god. But I guess I can't be surprised because she's been that way the whole time, but I low-key liked her for some of it. So like I said, Elphaba kind of accidentally shows off her crazy sorcery powers, and her sister's pretty upset at her because she was like, hey, this was my chance to start over and now we're the weirdos again. But the sorcery professor takes credit for all of the sorcery that had just happened and then privately tells Elphaba that she wants to take her under her wing. And Glinda is very upset about this because she wants to be a grand sorceress, and the sorcery professor essentially has zero interest in her and only wants to train Elphaba. Glinda also accidentally offers to room with Elphaba when she thought she was going to have a private suite. That becomes a whole thing. Then Miss Cynthia sings us The Wizard and I, which is Elphaba's first big solo, and I felt throughout her entire performance of this, don't get me wrong, it was incredible, and Cynthia Erivo is incredible, but because I know she is incredible, I found this song to be a little bit underwhelming, both from her vocal performance and from the direction of it. I just thought the direction was a little bit dull. They just kind of had her skipping around the school, and it just, I don't know, it didn't hit for me. It didn't hit for me the way I expected it to, and I got the sense that Cynthia was holding back her voice a little bit. I know that sounds crazy. I know that sounds crazy because you listen to it and you're like, she sounds amazing. What are you talking about? In my spoiler-free video, I talked about how Cynthia Erivo is genuinely not a human being when it comes to her voice. The things that she is able to do are just unexplainable via the laws of nature. And I just feel like there are singers like that in the world. There are performers that are just at another tier, and their voice is just at another tier, and their capacity to include emotion in their voice and the capacity for the power of their voice just goes beyond what other people are able to train themselves to do. And I don't know why that is. I don't know what those people have that makes them so special, but Cynthia is one of those people, and I felt like she was holding her voice back in this song. Even she hit all the big notes, and she hit them perfectly, and she held them perfectly, and that was it. And unfortunately, Cynthia has set such a high bar for herself that just hitting all the notes and sounding good feels like a mediocre performance from her. Every time Cynthia opens her mouth, I am moved. Genuinely, every time she opens her mouth to sing, I am emotionally moved by what she is singing. And when she got to the big part and she's like running through a field, and the direction felt kind of weird, I don't really know why she was running through the field, and I feel like she could have put more power into some of those final notes, and it felt like she intentionally did it. And it left me feeling a little bit disappointed walking out the other side. Now, it led to me building a theory as I'm watching the movie that ended up being true. I think this was also intentional direction. I think that Cynthia holds back that extra tier of power that she has in her voice until defying gravity. And I think that was actually a very intentional choice. And it makes sense. It's using the music as a part of the storytelling, which again goes back to what I said in my spoiler-free review, which is this movie was clearly made by somebody who just loves and adores musicals and understands them. And so while as a viewer, I was a little bit disappointed because anytime we get to hear Cynthia sing to that degree, it's a gift to this world. I do understand why they made the choice, because Elphaba has been so beaten down her whole life and so kind of put into a corner and been told she's a monster and told she's a freak, and she's never really been accepted into society, and they've in a way beaten her into submission. She tries really hard not to kick up a fuss. At times in her life when she stood up for herself, she ends up getting really punished, and so it seems like this has led to her not really standing up for herself that often. And she does put up boundaries with people. She does have her whole funny like, no, I didn't eat a lot of grass as a kid, like blah, 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 all that stuff that she says to new people that she meets. But there's part of her that feels kind of subdued. She just hasn't been allowed to be herself, and she hasn't been accepted as herself, and she's been punished for standing up for herself. So we watch her behave to the best of her ability in a way that doesn't draw a ton of attention to herself and doesn't kick up a fuss. And she finds herself the center of attention in a lot of situations anyway, and she seems very frustrated by this. And so I think it makes sense that she would be reining herself in and she wouldn't be allowing herself to reach her full potential because she hasn't been on the emotional journey that Elphaba goes on in this movie. We're still at the very beginning, despite how long I've been talking about this movie. This is gonna be a long video. Buckle up and get a snack. I love Wicked. But I think it makes sense that she would be reining herself in a little bit at this point in the show, and that she doesn't really reach the full tier of what she is capable of until defying gravity, because that's the moment where she basically says, F you, I'm gonna be myself and I'm gonna bring myself to the fullest potential. If nobody else is gonna accept me and nobody else is gonna support me and nobody else is going to allow me to be myself, then I'm going to give myself that space and you guys can't stop me. And that's what defying gravity is, and that's her big moment. And so I think it makes sense that they didn't have Cynthia really sing to that tier of her voice until she gets to that song. That being said, I can really respect a choice as an artistic choice and be disappointed in it as a viewer. I love Cynthia Erivo, and I would have loved to get to hear her sing more songs to her fullest potential, and it was a little bit disappointing to not be able to do that. As much as I understand the choice and I get why they did it, it was just kind of sad. So then they sing Loathing. Elphaba and Galinda don't really get along for a solid chunk of this movie. They are roommates and they're actively hostile towards each other, and they have a whole song about it called Loathing. It's very fun to watch. I love the way they directed it. I love the way they showed them kind of in their room not getting along and out and about in class and in the lunchroom and all that. Galinda is very, very popular, and so the people of the school really side with her, and they shun Elphaba as a result. This brings me to my only criticism of Ariana's performance, but really I think it's more on the director. There was one shot where Ariana is dancing with a bunch of the other students. She's not hitting the moves as sharply as the other dancers are, or she's just kind of behind them. I don't know how to explain it. But she wasn't dancing with the rest of the group. She was a little bit off in a way that's hard for me to explain without seeing the scene again.
By some magical trick of the universe, the exact moment I was talking about actually showed up on my TikTok. So I was able to find exactly what I mean, and I'm going to show it to you in slow-mo. Unfortunately, this video is like 3 pixels, so I do apologize for the quality, but I can still show you what I mean. Watch closely when she does her little book movement with the dancers behind her. If we watch it in slow motion and you compare her to the dancer to her left, you can see that the dancer moves the books down twice while she moves it down once, making it look like she's off. Here's the even weirder part. I also somehow got recommended the rehearsal video of it. And in this rehearsal video, they appear to do it the way that Ariana does it, where they just bring the book straight down instead of doing kind of 2 hits down. I recorded this before I found these clips, so what I'm saying here is I don't understand why they didn't just redo the take if she messed up the choreography, but these rehearsal videos lead me to believe that they either changed it or they intentionally choreographed it different for the actors doing the dance than the background dancers that they had. And that is such a bad choice because it leads to exactly my thought process, which is, oh, Ariana didn't do the choreography right because all I see is her doing something ever so slightly different than what the people behind her are doing. So I think the choreographer really messed us up, and I think they kind of hung her out to dry. I think they either should have had everybody do the same choreography, and if they had to make it slightly easier for the background dancers, and that's just what they had to do, or they should have redone the take if it was just a mistake.
So then we get some time with the girlies at the school, and we meet Dr. Dillamond, who is a goat professor. In this universe, animals can speak, and they have a professor that's a goat. During his lecture, he turns a chalkboard around, and there's a message scribbled on it that says animals should be seen, not heard. And Elphaba follows Dr. Dillamond. This is another point where they really expanded upon something that's just kind of shown as a flash. In the live production, this happens, and then Elphaba goes up to help Dr. Dillamond with something because he dismisses the class, and they sing Something Bad, which is a song about how something bad is happening in Oz. And they talk about how some of his animal friends have lost the ability to speak, and then he kind of baws in some of his words. But in the movie, they expanded this a lot further. They have Dr. Dillamond attend a meeting of animals where they're talking about how all these animals are losing their voices. And Elphaba kind of eavesdrops on it, and then her and Dr. Dillamond have the conversation they have in the show. One of the things that I was kind of telling my friends who aren't as familiar with Wicked, I don't want to spoil it too much, but they do know that there's a crazy plot twist at the end of the first act. And I told them that when you see the stage production, it does kind of feel like it comes out of nowhere. And there's like teeny tiny hints, but it's not really that foreshadowed. And so I feel like these things make that just slap in the face plot twist way less shocking. And they added more foreshadowing in other places too that does kind of ease the just shock value of that plot twist, which I think in a way is good because like I said, in the stage show, it does just feel like it comes out of absolutely nowhere. So I think there is actually some improvement upon the source material in foreshadowing that a little heavier so the audience isn't so like, what? Then Fiyero shows up. Oh, Fiyero. Jonathan Bailey. Jonathan. What a wonderful job. Fiyero shows up and he sings Dancing Through Life, which is his song that's basically like, why take anything seriously? Life is supposed to be fun. Let's all just have fun. And he convinces everybody in the school to go to this place called the Ozdust Ballroom, which is kind of like this underground club that only the cool kids know about. And this munchkin Buck has this giant crush on Glinda and tries to ask her out, and Galinda deftly avoids this by convincing him to ask out Elphaba's sister Nessa instead. So Buck does, and Nessa gets really excited because she feels like she's finally getting to live a normal life. And Buck tells Nessa that he wanted to talk to her, but he was just too nervous and that Galinda was the one who convinced him to approach her. And so Nessa tells Elphaba that she wishes there was something she could do to thank her because she did this amazing thing for her, and Elphaba ends up deciding to ask the professor of the sorcery program to welcome Galinda into the sorcery program, which is what Galinda really wants. Before Galinda finds out that Elphaba did this, she decides to convince Elphaba to show up to the Ozdust Ballroom wearing a hat that her and her friends consider to be very ugly, that ends up becoming the classic witch's hat. Galinda finds out that Elphaba essentially forced the sorcery professor to welcome her into the program right at the same time that Elphaba shows up to the Ozdust ballroom, and feels very embarrassed and realizes that Galinda gave her that hat and convinced her to come out to bully her so that everybody could make fun of her, and not because they were actually starting to welcome her. Instead of leaving, she decides to like dance in a really weird way and pretend like she doesn't really care that they're making fun of her. And Galinda ends up going out and joining her in this dance, and because Galinda accepts her, the whole school begrudgingly accepts her because Galinda is so popular and so powerful. Then they get back to Shiz and they do Popular, which is one of the most famous songs from Wicked, but it's Galinda promising Elphaba that she's gonna make her popular. I think Ariana does an amazing job in this. I think she's really funny. I think she's really cute. I think she really embodies everything that is lovable about the character Galinda, despite the fact that she's truly a horrific person from the inside out. And that makes her complicated, and I appreciate that. You guys know how bored I get of simple villains, and Galinda is not a simple villain, and I appreciate that, both about the character herself and about Ariana's performance of her. So yeah, I don't have that much more to say other than that I thought she obviously sounded great. She's Ariana Grande. The girl can sing, and I thought the way they staged it in the movie was really cute. And from this point on, Elphaba and Galinda are friends, and they go through the rest of the movie as unlikely friends. This is where I said we still see Galinda being her cutesy, like selfish, I'm the center of the world self, but because she's not hurting anybody in these scenes, it's easy to forget these aspects of her until they come back up again later on and become a lot more damaging. So then they go to class to find out that Dr. Dillamond isn't their professor anymore because animals are no longer allowed to teach at Oz. And they bring in a lion cub in the cage, and they start to tell the class about how the lion cub is a lot more comfortable in the cage and it actually prefers the cage to being free. Elphaba really doesn't like this for obvious reasons. So she uses her powers to essentially take these poppies and make everybody in the room fall asleep except for her and Fiyero. And her and Fiyero rescue the lion cub. And then they go to the woods together where Fiyero promises that he will get the lion cub to safety, and they have a bit of a moment together. This is when Elphaba sings I'm Not That Girl, which is a song about how she's not the kind of girl that somebody like Fiyero would fall in love with. And it's heartbreaking. It's really, really sad. This is where I know I've already glazed Cynthia so much in this video, but I'm just gonna keep doing it because she gave such an amazing performance and she deserves her flowers. One of the things that she is so great at doing is incorporating emotion into her voice. So even in songs like I'm Not That Girl, which are not meant to be big belted songs, they're meant to be a lot softer, there is just still something about her and the way that she sings that evokes such an emotion in you. And I actually feel like this is one of the more emotional performances in this movie, this song specifically. You can just feel the sadness permeating it because it's not just about Fiyero and Galinda. Oh, by the way, I don't think I mentioned Fiyero and Galinda are dating at this point. It's not just about the fact that Fiyero and Galinda are dating and Elphaba has a crush on him. It runs so much deeper than that. It's about her not really being accepted in society at all. It's about her always being an outsider, always drawing attention even when she doesn't want it for being so different from everybody else. And this is where in my spoiler-free review, I hinted at the fact that I feel like this part changes and becomes something so much deeper and so much more emotional when it's played by a woman of color. And Cynthia's performance of it brought a depth to it. This song in this movie is not really about Fiyero and Galinda. It's about Elphaba just never being accepted anywhere she goes and not really feeling like she belongs and being so mistreated and discriminated against and bullied, and even when she stands up for herself, she gets beaten down. And somebody like Galinda, who is a beautiful white blonde woman who's rich and comes from a very powerful family, just kind of has everything handed to her in life, one of those things being Fiyero. And the song's not about Fiyero, especially because at this point in time, her and Galinda are friends, but Galinda is still very selfish and is still kind of stepping all over Elphaba in a way. And Elphaba is such a good friend to Galinda, and Galinda just really isn't there for her in the end. And I feel like there was a depth to an understanding of what this all would actually feel like that Cynthia was able to invoke that I just have never seen brought to this part before. I just think it was very beautifully done. I thought it added to the performance so much. I've never felt so moved by that song before. I've I've never felt all that undercurrent in it. I've only ever seen it as like Elphaba is sad that Fiyero doesn't like her back. Yeah, I just thought it was really, really good, and it really changed this part of the story for me. Then Elphaba gets an invite to the Emerald City to meet the wizard and to kind of show her powers to him and potentially start the journey to become kind of an assistant to the Wizard of Oz. And she invites Galinda on this journey with her. Will live to regret doing that. We'll just say. So they go to the Emerald City and they sing One Short Day, which was a really, really fun song. Within One Short Day, there is a section of the song called Wizamania, which is the history of Oz, and we got a little cameo. Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel, who are the original Galinda and Elphaba respectively, show up as performers in Wizamania. I just thought it was so fun. It was such a cute cameo. It was so perfect, especially because they were playing like elders who are trying to pass on wisdom, and so that was kind of fun. And they even had them go up and stand next to Ariana and Cynthia. I just thought it was like the perfect place to do that. Of course, you have to have them in at least one of these movies. They bring them in and they're playing actors who are playing these elders that wrote this sorcery book that only Oz can read, in theory, allegedly. But it was kind of a fun touch to have them play like elders, essentially, and to have them stand right next to them. And then there's a really funny moment where Ariana like kind of hits a note and Kristen Chenoweth like puts her hand over her mouth and starts singing. It's just a fun interaction between two Galindas, and I really loved it. I loved everything about the cameo. Wait, this reminds me, there was something I wanted to talk about Dancing Through Life. There's a part at the beginning of Dancing Through Life where Jonathan Bailey hits the first line of the song and then does a front walkover, and it's so unexpected and it's so out of nowhere, and it made me laugh so hard. I don't know what came over me. I was literally hysterical in this movie theater. I don't know why. I don't know why I thought it was so funny, but for him to just be like, they always try to teach the wrong lessons, and then he just into a front. I mean, it was so funny. It was so out of nowhere, and it was so funny, and it was so absurd. This is what I hinted at in my spoiler-free review. Jonathan, if you watch this for some reason, I have to know. Did you just do that? Did you just do that in a take and they were like, that's fucking hysterical, we have to keep that in the movie? Or was it directed? It was so funny. They should have had him do that in Bridgerton. Anyway, back to Wizamania. I loved the cameo, and I loved everything they showed of the Emerald City. So then Elphaba and Galinda actually go into the building where Oz is, and he has his whole like show with his big face where he's like, I'm Oz, the great and powerful. And then he realizes it's Elphaba and it's just Jeff Goldblum, and he comes out behind the thing and he's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. It's so hard to see who's coming in from back there. I didn't realize it was you. Hey, what's up? And he shows them a diorama of Oz, and he sings A Sentimental Man, which, I mean, I guess they didn't change any of the lyrics, so maybe my friend was right that they didn't hint at it anymore, but I just feel like he was so like staring at Elphaba when he said or daughter, and he was just like staring at her, and then they cut right to her and she was just like sitting there. I don't know, I feel like they really, really heavily hinted that Oz is Elphaba's dad in this, but like I said, my friend felt like it wasn't any more hinted than it was in the stage production. So what do you guys think? But anyway, he sings A Sentimental Man about how he just wants to make Oz better for everybody, for all of his sons and daughters who are the people of Oz. And honestly, I said in my spoiler-free review that there wasn't a single performance in this that I thought was bad. I stand by that. I don't think anyone gave a bad performance, but I was shocked that I felt like Jeff Goldblum gave the most lackluster performance out of all the actors in this. I don't know what it was about his performance, but it was missing something. It was missing energy. It was, I don't know. It was like all the scenes he was in, it was like he didn't even care. And maybe it was an active choice. Maybe Oz doesn't really care and that's what he was trying to portray. But even like after Elphaba escapes, it just feels like he doesn't have any like to anything he's doing. He just felt so like bleh about everything, and it didn't even really seem like he cared that Elphaba escaped as much as the sorcery professor lady. And this is where the big reveal happens. Elphaba is able to read the Grimoire, which is the name of this like fancy sorcery book that was passed down from the ancient witches and wizards that used to run Oz. And she accidentally creates the flying monkeys. Part of what's fun about this show is that we kind of see how the Wicked Witch accidentally created all of the friends from Wizard of Oz. I don't want to spoil anything by telling you who ends up being who of any of the other characters, but this is the first that we see confirmation of her creating a creature that we know of from the original Wizard of Oz being these flying monkeys, right? And she's kind of horrified by it and she wants to reverse it, but Oz and the sorcery professor lady, who are both there, are like, oh no, they'll make perfect spies. And that's how Elphaba and Glinda find out that all of this hatred towards the animals and the taking away of their voices and the not allowing them to teach and saying they should be seen and not heard and trying to put them in cages is coming from Oz. He is the one who is trying to enslave the animals. Hey, up until now, we've just kind of been watching two girlies become besties. Not anymore, babes. This is a wildly different musical from here until the end. So Elphaba is obviously like, I'm not helping you guys with this. What the heck? And she's trying to get away, and she's trying to get Glinda away with her. Oh, I forgot to mention that at one point, Glinda like fakes being really sad about what happened to Dr. Dillamond. And Dr. Dillamond had trouble pronouncing her name. And so she said she changed her name from Glinda to Glinda in honor of Dr. Dillamond. I just forgot to mention that. So anyway, she's called Glinda from here on out. But Elphaba is trying to escape, and she's trying to pull Glinda with her. And they get in this whole fight that transitions into Defying Gravity, which is the most famous song from this show. Very, very well-known theater kid song. This is where we really see Elphaba have her big emotional awakening, where she realizes that she's never really been accepted by this society. She's always been beaten down. She's always been told exactly what her place is. She's been treated like an outsider. She hasn't really been welcomed. She's been punished for standing up for herself. And she leaves all of that behind and decides to believe in herself and believe in what she's capable of and not really allow what anybody else says or does to impact what she knows in her heart is right. And in that moment, she tries to get Glinda to come with her so that they can fight the wizard together. And Glinda decides not to go with her. Now, in the moment, they have a really heartfelt friend moment where they're just saying, I hope you're happy now that you're choosing this, is the line. And then in the stage show, Elphaba gets like rigged up into the sky and looks like she's flying. Obviously, in the movie, they like CGI'd her to be flying around on her broom. And she sings the big ending of Defying Gravity, which is the first moment in the movie musical where I feel like we get to hear the full range of what Cynthia is able to do with her voice, kind of like I was talking about earlier. When she gets to the big part of this song is when she really lets her voice go and lets it fly. And I'll reiterate that I understand why they made that choice, and I feel like it makes it a really impactful moment. And so from an artistic perspective, I totally get it, and I think it's great. I wish we got to hear more of it throughout the movie, but I get it. I have never really understood why Elphaba takes Glinda's decision to stay behind so well. I think it just lends itself to the song sounding good and them having like a cute friend farewell moment. I don't know if Elphaba believes that Glinda is going to try and do good from inside, basically join the wizard's inner circle and try and fix things that way. But I mean, essentially she chooses to join Oz's government instead of going with Elphaba and fighting him. That's the choice that I'm really excited to see the Arianators try and defend, because I don't want to accept that she is the villain of this story. But Elphaba very smartly is like, well, I don't need Glinda, I can do this by myself, and she flies up into the sky and she sings the big finale of this song and the finale of the act, and it's stunning, beautiful, amazing, gorgeous. Cynthia Erivo is an incredible singer, and it's on full display at the end of this song. And I loved every moment. I was sobbing hysterically. So was my friend. It just captures everything that is so amazing about this show and this song. It's emotional. It's beautiful. It's so well sung and so well performed. And they stage it so dramatic. Like, they make it so dramatic, exactly as dramatic as it needs to be. I was wondering how they were going to capture the magic and the awe of seeing Elphaba fly before your very eyes when you see it live, and I feel like they really did pull that off. It was a great end to the movie, and my only major criticism is that I wish they just put out a 5-hour movie and had it be the whole thing. I'd have watched it. I know a lot of people probably wouldn't have, but I'd have gone to see it. I'd have seen it multiple times. And I'm going to see this movie multiple times. I'm going to go see it the day it comes out, and I imagine I'm going to see it probably 2 or 3 times while it's in theaters. I wish I could buy it on DVD, bring back DVDs. Please. I'll go back to my youth and rip it onto a DVD like God intended. If they sell a DVD, I'll buy the DVD. Don't come for me. If they don't sell a DVD, like, what am I supposed to do? And I'm so excited to go get to see it again, and I'm excited to hear what you guys thought. Did you like it? How did you feel about it? Do you disagree with some of the points I made? Comment down below and tell me. I'm so excited for you guys to see this. I cannot wait to chat with you about it. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.